email. So let's say hi, you two.
Hi, Al here.
Greetings, email here.
Good, they're both awake. Just for the start, I'm going to open up the floor to Al and just kind of give us a general rundown on how you go about squad and platoon leading.
Well, the first question I ask myself is, what is my goal? And this is pretty difficult on Planet Side too, with there being no continent locking and stuff. So you basically have as a goal certs or getting a continent, and I don't see much other than that. The team isn't going for continents, and many people are going for certs. I try to go in between and find something fun to do, usually through organization. That's sort of my basic approach to it.
Okay, and email.
Yeah, I've seen Al do that with great effect as far as particular mission, and it's often a learning experience. My first step is to ask myself, what are my resources in terms of how many people I have, how many squads I have, and what's the ratio of TG members and known people to unknown, because what you can do with trained, familiar people is very different from what you can do without. And then I look at soft targets and sectors. I don't think about base capping. I don't think about grand strategy. And I may think about a learning experience for myself or for the group. In other words, putting the group in a position of where we'll inevitably face a retreat, or we will be in close proximity to other platoons and cooperating with them.
So you're saying you're mostly thinking about get the flow of the battle in the spot where you are, or?
Yes, yeah. I bring up the map. I look at the hard and soft targets and their relative proximity to the warp gate or to wherever we are at the time. You can always pull back. But there's a lot of factors there, and sometimes I don't think about those things at all. Sometimes it's just, all right, here we are, let's go.
Well, you mentioned grand strategy there, and I know currently, I don't know how up to date y'all are with the roadmap, but continent locking and the new continent hosting have both been pushed off the current scheduled roadmap to 4 months plus being out. So we obviously have a while for that comes in, but when that does come in, what are your thoughts towards that grand strategy, towards, taking continent after continent? Al, you can go first.
Well, I'm really looking forward to it because we have the coalition, for example, and one of the things I find difficult playing with them is that they sort of choose objectives that are not interesting to me, like and continent locking. I hope will unite the server finally in some goal, because now in theory you could defend continents that are yours, but people don't do it at all. I think that'll be very good for the game. For now, I think we're sort of the best thing we can do, and I try to do every time I squad lead is sort of think up a mission. It may be defend an area or whatever, but just sort of think of a mission for myself and the platoon and tell them.
Email?
As far as the continent locking goes, and I know this might sound well, I just don't take into account continent locking and issues around that. I'm not saying that's a good thing. It's just something I don't do, because I see the game as having, in its current state, no end, no beginning, and no real win or lose situation. I could be wrong in thinking that, but that's just the way I see it. So I'm always focused instead on what are we going to achieve in the next hour or two, How well are we going to do, and what are we going to learn in that context? Grand strategies, continent lockings, continent. I don't care about those things at this point. I'm not saying that's the ideal. I'm just saying that's the way I think.
Well, currently it's not even feasible to do it. Like I said, it's pushed way down their roadmap right now. But the idea being later is that will give you that grand strategy goal. You know, the overall goal, basic overall win, would be to push both empires back to their final warp gates.
Yeah, and as Al mentioned, that might change the dynamics of the game, and the coalition begins to act as a coalition instead of fragmented units.
Now the only real goal they have is cert farming, basically. Or some vague notion of let's take this continent, but
yes,
I mean
and
it's not their fault, you know.
yeah.
Well, since we're on the subject, Straight Raider wanted to ask, what are your thoughts on the coalition?
Well, I sort of said I'm much for it, but personally, I look I don't want to manage extra team speak. I think it's gonna be very hard. I like top level command to be. It's on a larger time scale. I'd like it to be very short in commands, and I'm afraid it'll be too much talking and strategizing going on while I'm trying to lead a platoon. So I like the idea a lot, but I think they miss a good goal now, and I'm scared of the comms a bit.
The comms are going to be a problem right now. As far as my mental map of the game, the coalition doesn't exist. I would like to see something develop, but it's going to develop out of trust and relationships, because Al's experienced this. We someone calls for help, you go off to help them as a squad or a platoon, and by the time you get there, you go to great effort to get there, they buggered off somewhere else. So this thing is going to grow organically, and it's well, we'll see. I just see it as a very long process ahead.
I do have one specific idea that a way I would like to see it implemented. Like for example, we have YT man who's quite busy with that. I'd love to just have him in a platoon as a radio guy, just talking with them, telling me what their basic strategy is, so we can sort of fit into that. But I don't really, when I'm platoon leading, I don't have to bother with all that comes. I can just get updates every 15 minutes, half an hour from my radio guy, and I don't need more than that, because if you have a platoon, it takes quite a long time to move anywhere. So
yeah, that radio man is really the solution. We've used that in the distant past for complex organizations with the first MFP, and it solves so many problems. So that's going to be really critical. Someone who is dedicated, still operating, still fighting, still active in the squad and in the platoon, but monitoring the communications next to the platoon leader, so that frees up the platoon leader.
I think it's just a matter of doing it, actually, because I know some people want us to cooperate more, so they can automatically be the good liaison.
Yeah, and when I printed up these questions of what are your thoughts on the coalition, I made a mental note for myself that I need to start reaching out to these people. I guess others have. You mentioned YT, and find out who these people are, develop a relationship with them, and start thinking about it. Because there's no reason why we couldn't have like our Friday nights, where there's one night where for 2 hours or 3 hours we're going to join a coalition and make an effort and start to begin that. It would add a whole new level of play.
I think it would add enjoyment on the server level.
It's one of my own personal questions. I really don't deal with the NC Coalition at all, and I don't know how they operate. And since YT Man is in the channel, I kind of want to field that to him, you know. on a nightly basis, what does the coalition do, and how do they operate?
YT here.
Yeah.
The coalition currently is in a state of dysfunction and just in a lack of participation. In the beginning of the game, around December, going into January, into the very early parts of February, the coalition hit its stride and had a large amount of participation. There was effort to consolidate the group and to get it to working on some large scale, and that was attempted during the Friday night Empire Showdown, the big event, and that we came away with that from with incredibly mixed results, coming away with no real victory anywhere, and kind of fragmenting the group. It was really not to the detriment of the coalition. It was more to the showing us what the limitations of the coalition were at that time. But currently, the coalition just lacks participation.
Question for YT: what do you think caused the devolution of the group? I could see many reasons, but no point in speculating. What do you think caused that to wind down?
I will largely put blame on the state of the game. In early release, there was as has been said by many people, there's not really a large-scale goal, and the way the current mentality of game is that you want that win, you want that victory, but when we don't have that, we're looking for something else, and so I'm thinking that there is a burnout at one point, and then as things get introduced later down the line, it will happen. But I do think that at some level, the coalition, the point of the coalition, its mission statement is that it's just a unifying force. It's a way to group many outfits together, no matter what their size is, and to all coordinate them together. However, as a result of this, you can have one outfit being 6 people, and they have just as much say as another outfit being a platoon, or another outfit being 2 companies. And this tends to weight, like the ones that are larger.
Sorry, can I cut in? YT man, wanted to ask something, but this might be the good time to ask it. How does the command structure work?
That is what I was getting at. There's effectively no command structure in the coalition, and that is the inherent issue, in my opinion, as to why it is ineffective.
Is it basically, one outfit leader saying, hey, we're doing this, and then another outfit said, okay, we'll do this, and you're lucky if they even talk to each other that much?
Yes, effectively, exactly that. And as has been said by email earlier, they were talking about trying to create that friendship, and that was a big part of it, to get those outfits liking one another to the point where they will bend over backwards to help one another. Just because of the lack of participation, though, that hasn't really been seen. And I think, personally, getting that friendship with outfits is more important than getting that coalition to work. My personal preference would be to find a way to get a working relationship with some of the larger forces, and then be able to work side by side with them.
You think it'd be better to do maybe instead of having a coalition night, find one, maybe 2 outfits that we worked with in the past, and then approach them on those nights and just try to work with those 1 or 2 outfits? That's
yes,
open to all of y'all.
Yes, but I still think that's just a way to get the coalition moving forward too, because that grouping needs to be, that trust needs to be built, because there's a large amount of contention, and no outfit leader sees the same thing as the other outfit leaders, and they all have their own opinions and the way that they find the game interesting and the way that they want to play the game, and even trying to convince them that your strategic thinking is the correct one is like an uphill fight. So there's no supreme commander. There's no unifying strategic goal.
It still might be useful to know that they're going for the crown all day, for example.
Yes, it is definitely better, in my opinion, than leader chat, and it does not cost 100 certs.
We could use it as a source of intel more than as organization per.
Yeah, I kind of wonder if it wouldn't be better to just use it, hey, we're doing this, but actually, harp on that fact and keep them up to date as much as possible.
Exactly. It might set a good habit. And might I call attention to our ongoing cooperation with the Ace outfit? Not everyone may know they are an air outfit, and their leader, I believe, or one of their guys at least, that name is unavailable, I think. And we've been cooperating with them in a way that, as we were talking about for quite a long time, and they have had no problem integrating into our platoons and working under the command of the platoon we're running. So
It sounds like a start. I think this is a question we should revisit, open up a thread, and YT and perhaps myself and others to get to work on outreach again.
Well, let's bring it back down a little level and back to Al and email. This is a question YT Man posed. What's your favorite operation and action of a squad or platoon scale? Al, you first.
I think my favorite at the moment is moving the squads individually within line of sight in, for example, a hilly terrain. If I'm understanding the question right. So I'll have the squads on several good positions. And going towards the enemy, I'll move one up, then the next, and they'll be able to cover each other. I find it very effective, very cool to see. You can see the whole platoon working together. That's one of my favorite things to do for sure now.
Email.
I've seen Al do that to great effect, and it's something I want to learn to do. Not being there yet, I enjoy getting the unit, the platoon, to work together as a, say, an armored unit, forming up, grouping up, moving out in a cohesive fashion, which I think sets a tone for the rest of the event as well. Al is way ahead of me here, and by the way, so is YT. I was watching him last night organize defenses and attacks. So what I've been doing to teach myself is starting slowly with just grouping up at warp gate, organizing, and then either by armor or by air and moving out. But I need to do more of what both I've seen YT and BigGaayAl do, and that is on spot organizing. All right, Alpha, you're on that hill. Bravo, you're over there on that hill. And Charlie, you're between the two of them, and don't you dare move until I tell you to.
Might I comment on that? Or
Please.
recommend how to do it? To me, I see very big difference in our styles often. As I saw in your videos, you are looking on the map constantly. I'm just looking around in the middle of my squads, running from one to the next often. And I sometimes split up the platoon as well, but I think it's situational. Like when I get to a spot where it's good to attack 4 points at once to a situation, then I split up the squad. But often it's not the case. The bigger the battle, the closer your squad should be together, I think, your 4 squads. So when the fight is big and your group is a small part of a big fight, then I think is the time to go more micromanaging and get out of the map a bit.
Oh, would I be able to ask further up on that?
Yeah, guys, this is for everybody. If you have a question, just post something down in the chat window and I'll get to you when I can. YT, go ahead.
So Al, you're saying that in larger battles that now should that management be done at the squad level or should that management be done at the platoon level? Because I find it hard to do micromanagement at any point in time, but let alone as a platoon leader.
The thing is though, if you're in this big battle and you're all attacking this one area, you're within 200 meters of each other, the whole platoon, and you have the four squad leaders more organizing themselves, it's a different type of organization. You're never going to be able to do the same things. They will sort of work individually off each other. And I think in the end it's going to be disadvantage. Did I answer your question right?
Is this against a force, like a large battle where you're vastly outnumbered, or where you're participating with a force, an allied force that's helping you, and the battles around,
Participating.
and the battles around like 1-1
Yeah.
maybe?
Yeah, the battle's sort of equal, I'm imagining.
All right. Yeah, you did.
Well, that brings up another question we were asked. What is the best time for the platoon to retreat from a heavily contested fight?
I'll take that. Before it's too late. Before it's too late. But the best time to retreat is quite literally before it's too late, because then it's not effective. Before.
Okay, well, what are the signs and signals then that are telling you that it's too late?
It's kind of like a beating heart. When you start to get a lot of incoming messages, enemies here, enemies there, air coming there, 6, 12, 14, as those numbers rise, then it's like a tempo. You get a feel for the tempo, and as you get, okay, now I'm not there yet, but it's a goal of mine to get a sense of, okay, this is the moment, and past that moment we're not going to be so much as retreating as being beaten back. And the other side of that equation is you can say, okay, to yourself as a leader, this is the time when we must move, mein Sprocket, but getting your men to move in a timely fashion, because they're very reluctant, unless they're well-trained, disciplined men, they're very reluctant to pull back from a battle. So you have to take two things into account. When is the time to retreat? How long is it going to take you to convince your men to retreat and for them to actually retreat? So the answer to that question is a lot of time, in a way.
I want to add something, two things. The first being, you can see on the map often when it's a good time to retreat, because whenever you see red around all the blue, it's time to retreat. Even if you don't feel it yet, if you're surrounded on the map by the enemy, there's only if you have like very good cover or very good defensive position will you ever hold out. Normally, if you see surrounded on the map in a minute or two, people will start to complain. And the second thing is, and that is fun. If your team has been getting somewhere and they're losing the battle, but it's a good battle, it's like still an even battle and they're enjoying themselves, I've often made the mistake and seen the mistake made of retreating from a good fight. Even though you may be losing some overall goal, I think often it's good to ask your platoon, is the battle still fun?
That brings up another point. I mean, are there times when, either like you pointed out, for reasons of just pure enjoyment, or even for tactical reasons, are there times where you just want to, stick your ground, even though you know it's going to be a losing battle, just to be that sort of speed bump in the road?
Definitely, like Big Gay said, there's so many considerations. There's the human consideration. girls just want to have fun, guys just want to have fun. You got to make sure that there's a fun factor to it, and so that means that sometimes you're going to stick around and lose the fight, but you're going to have a hell of a time doing it. And other times you're going to exercise and demonstrate tactical dexterity and get pure pleasure out of being efficient in being tactically sophisticated.
Do you have anything to add, Al?
No.
Okay. We've kind of got a couple of questions here that are related, and they're mostly to do with, I guess, admin work at a platoon level, but how many times is too many when you're requesting for someone to get back to on an objective? Or how in general do you handle problem players?
I'm gonna go first because I usually go first in the night as well, because I'm on Euro time. And I'd say it depends because when I'm just logging on and like doing casual play and not playing too seriously, it's gonna be very different. It's sort of how good the discipline is that I'm getting from my guys, that good a discipline will I enforce. If 10 of a squad are doing something perfectly and another one is always way off, then he's going to get kicked. But if they're all sort of disorganized, I'm going to be much more careful. But on the on the whole, I like to give people a lot of chances because they may be AFK, especially new people. I give them a lot of chances to just see how it's going and maybe join after 20 minutes sometimes.
There's not much that I can add to that. You got to have a lot of flexibility, a lot of patience. If your squads are full, then your patience degrades, and it's like, all right, you're not doing it. You're out because there's 10 people that are going to step in for you. If it's a loose collection of pickup people, then you gently work with them. And I've worked with squads where it starts off as a rabble. It appears that nobody's listening, and by gentle persuasion, after an hour of playing, you end up with 2 or 3 squads that are operating like a well-oiled machine, and it's just wonderful to watch that happen. And in cases where you don't know any of them, but there's a thirst out there among a certain type of player to enjoy nobody wants to join a basketball game where people are trying to play hockey. People want to play a well-organized basketball game. And it's the same in this context. There's a lot of people that want to play a well-organized, well-led game. And if you coax and if you hit the right circumstances, you can do that very effectively.
I'd like to add to that too. For people, when you try to squad lead or platoon lead, try and have patience and pay a lot of attention to like the flow of it and the story. It takes some time to get the platoon rolling, especially big platoon. It takes some time for the people to get habits and just start following orders and having fun. And it's really a wonderful feeling, as Emil says, when you see it, it feels like a machine that gets rolling. But often people may think they need to have to have a lot of success from the start, but you really have to have patience and give yourself and your platoon time.
Quill had a question. If you want to go ahead and speak up, or I can read it for you.
Comms discipline has been an issue in our squads as of late. How do you guys kind of manage comms and people over communicating or under communicating stuff in your squads?
Emil's doing much better job than me, and he's certainly taking the lead with some other people, so we should respond to that. I think.
One thing you can do is often the over communicators will try and explain or excuse, and so you can gently say, I don't need an explanation, I don't need an excuse, just hear what I'm saying and do what I'm saying in so many words. And it's good to give people very specific examples. Okay, you don't need to say all of that. All you need to say is Bravo comms. So tell them exactly what you want them to say in standard operating situations. That's very helpful.
Is there an aspect of, we have SOPs for comms, we have SOPs for, uh, situation reports and things like that. Is there an aspect of saying you guys need to read the SOPs on the forums and things like that, or is there just not room for that? In the middle of a heat of battle, you can't really tell somebody to go read the forums. You kind of have to spend quite a lot of time educating them in game, and when you're doing that, you're not really kind of leading the squad or leading the platoon.
It's got to happen in game. There's no point in telling people to go somewhere and read something, and you're not going to complete the process in game. You're going to do a little bit and a little bit and a little bit, but it's got to be a learning experience right then and there. And it's always going to be partial. It's always going to be incomplete, and it's not that time consuming. I'm trying to develop a habit myself. I really like Al's method of management by walking around.
How do you mean? What do you mean by management by walking around?
Al, describe how you will use proximity voice.
Yeah, I just noticed myself doing this and find it very enjoyable. It was happening when I had these squads quite close together but separately. And to minimize platoon chat, I just ran over from one to the next. And I conversed with the squad leaders on proximity. And that was actually quite effective and very immersive also. So it's definitely something I can recommend.
I had a new guy the other day, just joined the platoon, an elderly gentleman, served in the military 26 years ago, and he immediately started to adopt the military standards, which are quite verbose compared to what we have. And I parked my Sunder, I walked over to him. It was quite an adventure just trying to locate someone and find them, which is quite fun. And I stood next to him in game and I said, introduced myself, and I said, I'm going to work with you, and you're doing an excellent job, but I want to reduce your comms by 50% and that type of thing. But literally siding up next to someone, identifying yourself and saying what your intent is can go a long way.
And if you're a soldier in the platoon and you just see your platoon leader running up, you're firing at the enemy, he's behind you talking to the squad leader and the platoon leader are talking, it just adds something to the game in my opinion.
Yeah, another nice way of doing it that way too is it educates the person without making them feel called out in the middle of platoon chat or squad chat, so it makes them more receptive to hearing it.
You
But
always have to respect people's feelings. If you make people feel uncomfortable, point it out in any way like that, they're going to shut down. They're going to be resentful. Other people are going to be afraid. It has to be done very gently.
Yeah, I've been using proximity when there's an issue with someone. I try to get close to them and use proximity to talk to them first.
But on comms, I want also to draw attention to the power of example. I've noticed it since email, like when the time you spoke with this new member, I was leading this platoon for hours, and you came in and you just started doing the strict comms discipline you talked of in the forum. I was using it a bit before, but you started doing it, and just they all clicked into place. It was already a platoon that was functioning well, but they just picked up those comms from the first few sentences you said. So it's really, even if you don't know how it works, people just copy it. It's quite instinctive.
Yeah, I've been playing for 7 years, and I've never seen such a strong example of infectious viral behavior as in this game. I don't know if it's a platoon structure. I don't know if it's what we've learned, but it's quite amazing. Exactly what Al says, where people, squad leaders and squad members start imitating best practices almost instinctively, because people want to do well. They don't want to be the weakest link.
I agree. I haven't seen this kind of teamwork since PR, actually.
I would argue that on such a scale, you haven't even seen it in PR.
Yeah, true.
Considering that we operate platoons of 48 people, and I mean, this doesn't even include the outfits.
It happened in PR, but it was spread across 2 teams, so it was a little different.
I would also argue that the scale matters. You're right. They're incredibly different games.
YT, you got a question?
Yeah. So, both of you, what do you value on a strategic or tactical level for achieving a impact on the battlefield? I understand that sometimes you guys don't play necessarily to win, because winning is definitely a very short-term thing. Nothing lasts in this game, and in a way, that's kind of the point. But for that short-term victory, for that maybe even hour-long victory or hour-long push, what do you guys value? Do you focus on enemies, on game objectives, or on battle space?
I think it's a dangerous question in a way, because I don't see any way to answer it.
I have an answer.
What's the impact in the battle?
I'll
How are you
finish,
going to measure it? Sorry, go ahead, Email.
Because impact on the overall map, and because we're, even 2 platoons is a small number on a large map, I measure goals and efficiency and how well did I do? How well did my squad leaders do? Did we achieve our immediate objective? Did we recognize the objective was unachievable and respond correctly? So everything's very situational and focused on the squad, the self, the platoon, and the quadrant that we're immediately involved in. But I do admire, and I can't emphasize it enough, I admire, for example, YT's great depth of knowledge for the bigger picture, and it's something that I'm trying to acquire.
I'd like to forward 2 main goals. Do the people in my platoon feel effective in whatever we are doing, whatever it may be, and are we enjoying it? It's much different, and I'm starting much more from the squad member up in a like bottom up way in setting my goal that way. But because there's no overarching goal, if my platoon feels effective at what they're doing, then that's perfect for me.
Morale of the troops, so to speak.
Yeah. I mean, having fun, feeling effective, yeah. I don't see that capturing a continent could come into that, or defending the sector you want to defend that day. You can add secondary goals to that, but those will normally be the main goals. Although sometimes I will try to learn something more, if the people want to.
To follow up, I did mean specifically those maybe secondary goals, those short-term things. Like for example, when picking an objective, like something to do or something to respond to, do you focus on killing the enemy like Napoleon would? Would you focus on the game objectives like going for the capture points, or battle space, controlling the area, or some other maybe combination of those or something? This is on a strategic level, less on a morale level, which is certainly important in the game.
I'm looking at sectors. I'm looking at the zone, east side, west side, central, this quadrant, that quadrant, in relationship to what size of resources I have available. So very much in that sort of thing. And always in the back of my mind, I'm always concerned about troop morale, and I was going to write something about this, I was going to post something about this, but how the dilemma as a platoon leader is you have no idea how other people are experiencing the game, and it's part of the challenge.
I think you should ask more. It's possible, you know. You can just ask.
Yes, and I've seen others do that, and it's part of my yes to simply ask how's it going? Is this working for you? Is it time to withdraw? Shall we stay and fight? Those type of questions.
But my strategic goals would be basically, usually I'm thinking defensively, plugging the holes. So if a big force is moving, friendly force, I'm not gonna move ahead of it. I'm gonna move sort of to the side of it. Sort of finding a way where I can apply the platoon in a useful way, but that also may be a sudden strike in a biolab with the max crash. But still, the most guidance is what is gonna be fun. Other than that, I'm just trying to control area and sort of prevent people incursions into the line on the flanks.
Can I ask a quick question, John?
Yeah, go ahead.
Do you guys, as squad leaders or platoon leaders, and this is open to not just email and Al, but whoever else has done this, but you guys feel sort of a pressure to entertain your troops? I mean, we talk about it has to be fun as well, and it isn't always. You get a few minutes here and there where people are standing around waiting for stuff to happen. And you have to be patient. But do you feel a pressure, right? Well, I have to entertain people. We have to make sure that this is fun, and that sometimes that takes a side show towards actually completing an objective.
I'll take that one, and you kind of have to. At least I would think most of the time. This isn't real life. We are playing a video game. We come here to have fun. Yeah, we still do the tactics and the teamwork and stuff, but I'm not going to sit here and, peel fake potatoes for 14 hours.
Half miler.
To me, it's certainly a frustration often, but lost my train of thought there.
No, I think it's it's an interesting question. Is that there are things that you do for the team or the outfit or the whole side, the NC or whatever, and there are things that you do, just to have a laugh and just to have fun as well. And it's hard to reconcile the two sometimes.
But you're always trying to find a balance, and if it's a big platoon, the balance is impossible, and the variance of what people want gets so big that you have to take it into account, but then you have to shove it aside, and like from time to time you look at what the other people want. Are they enjoying themselves? But then you don't think about it anymore because you have to shut it out, and it's one of the main things that can be intimidating for new platoon leaders, and we should all watch over not pressuring them too much.
If I could add, I never really think that I have to ever entertain, but that's because I contribute battlefield morale, like the people, like how they feel, the mental well-being of your soldiers. I mean, I know it's not real, but I mean, we all want to have fun, and I understand that. And if we're not having fun, if we're bored, if we're frustrated, we might leave, or we might not do as well, or we might disobey orders. And you have to take that into account. But I kind of see that as a part of the game, in a way. You have to think as a platoon leader of the morale of your troops, and that is inseparable, in my opinion. But it should never determine what you should do if you are trying to do a serious, in my opinion, operation.
One little piece of advice maybe for people: if your platoon is doing well and you suddenly give an order and it just takes 10 minutes to do it, while before it was not taking any time to do, it was going really well, chances are you've made a mistake. In the sense that I've seen it happen when I was platoon leading, when I was in a platoon, when you make a decision that just the whole platoon hates because they were having fun or for whatever reason, and it's not that they consciously all decide to stop following order, they just get so demoralized suddenly that it all falls apart. So if you see that happening, it's time to pick up the pieces and start building again ASAP.
I've seen that, definitely seen that happen. I've been part of that, and I've, been. I think that happened a few weeks ago with email, and he called us kind of strategic retreat, but we couldn't quite understand why we were leaving a perfectly good battle that we thought we were winning. But at the same time, we didn't have the strategic overview that email had over the battlefield, and he knew perfectly well what he was doing. So it's kind of hard because you have this, much lower scale view of the battlefield, and email has, he's looking at the map and seeing what's going to happen in, 30 minutes, 20 minutes. So you kind of have to just trust your leaders and say, well, he's obviously seen something that I haven't seen, and we just have to do this and see what happens.
I figure people have fun when successful, and when not successful, people don't have fun. And I would think that the only time to really be cautious is during a very high, very active battle, a very large battle, one where there's a lot of things going on. It's draining to people sometimes. Sometimes it might be exhilarating.
True. When you put a giant machine in motion, just like a stone rolling down a hill, you have to expect that it's going to take an enormous amount of effort to stop that stone from rolling down the hill. So sometimes you're better off just letting it roll.
Fela, did you want to say something?
No, I pressed my on key. Go on, guys.
There is a lot.
If I could ask another question, I guess.
Go ahead, yeah.
Since there's a lack of them, do you have any definitions, battlefield terms, things that aren't necessarily intuitive, immediately, that aren't necessarily part of the core game? Because the game is very much a sandbox, and it's what we do with it that is what defines it. That you consider your own. For example, I would say that I would consider an assembly area something that I tend to do, which is something that I just put a marker on the map at before we go out somewhere, and say we'll all assemble here with our armor, our sunderers, and then we'll move. And we keep this orderly movement going. Do either of you have anything like that?
I'm not understanding exactly your question. Could you rephrase?
Do you have a operation, something that you consider necessary?
Yeah, I think I have an
Unique.
answer. Stop me if it's not answering your question the way you intended. I have the concept of surface area, which I wanted to speak to the community about anyway. Some of you may know it from StarCraft, and it's sort of everyone's read Sun Tzu stuff and The Art of War and World War II battle tactics. We all know that. But in this game, I encountered this notion of surface area. And it's sort of when you imagine two blobs, two blobs meeting each other head on. If one army is more spread out, when they collide, the two balls, and the one is sort of an ellipse or something, then the one that's spread out will curl around the ball-formed army. And they say in StarCraft you have more surface area. The group that's spread out. Are you understanding the image, Whitey?
Oh, I perfectly understand that. I didn't.
Yeah. And so I find the notion is helpful in a way that is not in any other battle doctrine I know in the game. And this is what I'm doing when I'm using the 4 squads and I'm moving them about. And I think other platoon leaders maybe sometimes pay too little attention to just looking on the map, seeing where is the enemy and trying to envelop. Not worrying about the points, not worrying about anything, just avoiding that scenario I talked earlier about of being surrounded, seeing yourself surrounded on the map. And if you just keep more surface area on the enemy, chances are you will win. And
Well,
it's good to learn from StarCraft because it's very big battles also. Sorry, John?
just to point out, that's not anything new. It's been done since the dawn of time. The where it kind of works out in this game is very much like StarCraft. Unlike in the real life, we don't tend to use formations and stuff. So our tactics are basically based around the tactical blob sort of sense. And so rather than using terms like flanking, maneuvering, we're using things like expanding our blob to envelop the other. It's old tactics being rehashed in a new way, I guess, based on the limitations.
I find that blob metaphor, just to continue this discussion for a moment, works in a different direction as well. If all things being equal, and you're facing a force, an enemy force that is the same size as your force, but that enemy force has greater surface area on the map, that says to me that their front lines, somewhere along their front lines, they are weak because they have spread across a greater area. So surface area in terms of the map can be an indication of a greater surface area can equal strategic weakness and opportunity.
Well, I think what Al was trying to say is when these two blobs meet up.
Oh, right, in indirect contact.
As one
absolutely.
envelops the other,
Yeah.
it's pointing inwards towards the other one.
Right.
I just find it a rich notion to me, and it's maybe based on blobs, but I find it useful in many ways, and it lets me see lots of mistakes sometimes. Like I see many times an army, like the enemy army sort of over a tower, a little bit spread out, equal forces, 2 platoons meeting each other. And our platoon just starts tunneling into them as if there was an imaginary doorway that they're all going through. More because of where they're spawning from and because they're just running straight forward. And often we will add our platoon just to that stream. And I then step back and I look at it and I see us just getting choked into the...
I think what you're getting into is a lot of basic psychology and mob mentality.
On that, I would like to suggest that battle space is something that I think is often overlooked. I can remember recently, it was within the past week, there was a defense operation over Grey Heron on Esmir, which is right next to the current Vanu Warp Gate. It's just for a quick map, it's just this little small point, and then there the lake, the river, and then a hill leading up to the Vanu territory. I found that if they are not strong enough, if our forces just focused on that direction, that one direction that they're going to be coming from, and they are not larger, they are not able to get close to you, they cannot maintain the attack. And I find too often that we kind of, or not we, but the generic faction, the generic team in general, rushes straight to the game objective instead of trying to facilitate constant advance. I think our platoon is special in the fact that we actually do we advance in a relatively reasonable manner, and we don't rush into the oven, I guess.
What's that? Like again, it's that whole mob mentality. You know, I want to be the first one there, and a lot of that brings that whole I'm going to move, you know, point A to B in a straight line, damn everything else, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of squad leading is stopping that mob mentality. That's like half the job in a way, you know.
Well, folks, we're gonna wrap it up here for tonight. We only got about 5 minutes till the event, so I do thank everybody for coming. Coiled, I believe are you gonna have more of these, or what's going on that front?
I think we'll try. We'll see. You know, I think we'll gauge some interest in it and see what other. A lot of people have had some other ideas about what other topics we might talk about, and I think it's been pretty interesting. I certainly have learned a lot. And if anybody has any ideas for other topics they'd like to suggest, then by all means, you know, post it on the forums, and you know, we can go ahead and do that. You know, and if people have time. We don't necessarily have to have guests. We can change the format. You know, we're pretty open-minded about it. So yeah, you know, I think it'd be cool to have another one if everybody else is up for it.
Yeah. Did you record tonight's thing?
Yeah, I have. Yeah.
Okay. Once you get the recording up and post it in a thread, you can, I guess, do a topic. You know, thoughts for next time or whatever.
Yeah. I'll post the audio and I'll transcribe as much of it as I can understand, and yeah, it should be good.
Thanks to Tortoise and John for organizing. I think it's been fun, and I think this might be very good for our community. So.
Very thought-provoking. I've been recording as well. I'll condense this into a video.
If I could add one thing, just maybe a suggestion.
Sure.
I think that this would be a great way to be able to peek into the minds of our general leaders and to maybe share some insights to the game that aren't necessarily intuitive. And one way to help that, though, I would think, would be maybe we could find some way to have a team view or a shared session of a picture of a map where we could draw something. And this would be either abstract or it could be a map of Indar, and just try to explain how things work with like a blackboard or something, you know?
Yeah, I mean, we'll have to think of, you know, logistically how that might work. Are you talking about something like interactive that you can use right there and then, or something that people can place just notes on?
Interactive. I was thinking currently one option would be a shared Google Docs image, and this could be set up so that anyone could access it, anyone could view it, and anyone could interact with it and adjust it, and it would update automatically, and you could maybe like Al would have been able to have drawn a representation of his blob. And he could have shown it in action, or something similar. It would be a way to focus specifically on, say, something in game that we could maybe try to work and explain it a way.
No, I get what you're saying, Wyatt, and I think that's probably a pretty good idea. I remember there's a bunch of other games that are out. I remember Battlefield 2 had sort of these kind of tactical drawings that you could make, and you could sort of preempt and design sort of maneuvers and things like that. So are you talking about something like that?
Yes.
Okay. Like I said, guys, we'll get a forum post up later. We can discuss all this. Email if you want to get in game and get us started. Let's get this event going.
All right, your daughters, let's take a few minutes break to do the bio thing.
Sounds good.
Thanks again to everyone. Thank you, moderators and organizers.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for showing up, and thanks for your questions, everybody.